What do a clothespin, a section of shock cord, a bottle of cheap rum, and a pair of gloves all have in common? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. I'm talking about some very simple offshore fishing gear, just what we use on Calypso when we fish. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Teak Guard. Looking to refinish your boat's teak with a minimum of mess and fuss? Look no further. Teak Guard's non-toxic, water-based formulas for cleaning and finish will turn your teak from dingy to sparkling in no time. Use coupon code BG20 for 15% off your order of $50 or more. Visit teakguard.com and admire your teak with less maintenance. And I will tell you that if you don't have teak finished in some way, shape, or form, and you catch a fish and butcher it on the side deck, it's going to get into your teak. It's probably a good idea to have some kind of something protecting your teak, and Teak Guard definitely is the way to go. So let's get on to this whole fishing conversation, because we certainly like fresh fish as much as the next person, and catching it ourselves adds some spice to sailing life. We generally tend to only fish offshore. We are looking for pelagic fish to reduce the chances of ciguatera, which is definitely not something you want to mess with. And after some experimentation with rods and reels, we've settled on a much, much lower tech option. We use a hand reel. It's a plastic yo-yo looking contraption that we pair with around 120 feet of 200-pound nylon test line. Very simple. It's all by hand. There's nothing fancy. There's nothing expensive. Very, very simple. Our lure collection, it's been pretty well decimated over the last years, and we haven't spent any time restocking it, although I did hear from a reader this morning who said that they've caught more than 50% of their fish, and they are very good fisher people. Absolutely. They use mostly cedar plugs. Our basic concept is we use a colorful skirt over a 2 or 3-pronged hook, and the combination is connected to a length of wire leader that is in turn attached to that nylon line that I talked about. The other end of the line is a 4-foot length of shock cord or bungee cord. Yeah, the stuff that you really shouldn't use to tie up anything fancy. It stretches. It's perfect for this application. One end of that gets looped around our boom gallows post and is the anchor for the entire setup of our fishing system. What about that clothespin? Well, the clothespin is tied onto the shock cord at about the 3-foot out mark, and then you pull it back on itself to snap on there so that there's a length of shock cord that is absolutely just looped. It's not tensioned at all. But when a fish hits the line, it snaps the clothespin with a loud snap, and that's our alarm that says there's a fish on. Or maybe it's not a fish. Maybe it's just a whole lot of sargassum weed, which is definitely a challenge and a not great thing when you're fishing offshore in the Caribbean. The sargassum weed is insane. But the shock cord then allows the fish to play the line with some stretch in there. It doesn't get jerked out. The hook doesn't get jerked out of its mouth. But if you're ready to fish, you just unspool the line into the water, lure end first. Make sure that you've attached the shock cord end to something on the boat first. So Jeremy will wind up all the nylon line onto the reel, the hand reel, and the shock cord gets looped on there on top of all the line, so that the shock cord, all he has to do is wrap it around the post of the boom gallows, attach it to a cleat, and then he can let the lure into the water and feed it hand over hand. You're not just going to dump all of the line. You can't dump all the line in there because it's wound onto the reel. You feed it out, lure end first, and then when all of it's out and your reel is empty, you fasten the alarm, i.e. hook the clothespin back in on itself, and go about your business, waiting for the snap, and hopefully fish on. You use those gloves, you put them on to pull the line in hand over hand. You're not bothering trying to restow the line on the reel while you're actually pulling in a fish. That takes way too much time and finesse, and your adrenaline is pumping if you have a fish on the line. To land the fish, a gaff definitely helps. We have landed fish with and without a gaff, and a gaff definitely is easier. We just haven't managed to dig it out of where it's living in the forepeak these days. So the last couple times we've had a fish, it's been jerk up, swing the fish into the cockpit or onto the side deck, and really hope that it doesn't flick itself off the line in the process, because sometimes that happens, particularly with mahi-mahi. And actually, if it's a barracuda, you're hoping that it does flick itself off because you don't have to deal with those nasty teeth at all. There are people who eat barracuda. We are not among them. And the rum? What's that bottle of rum for? It's not for toasting your excellent luck. You definitely want better rum than that. But it's for killing the fish. Splashing alcohol into the gills has it breathing in the alcohol, and rumor has it it's a pretty humane way for the fish to go very, very quickly. We generally use cheap vodka if we have it, but I forgot to restock before we left the States, and here in the Caribbean, rot gut rum is inexpensive and widely available. So we have a bottle of that. One other note with alcohol, clear is supposed to be better than dark. So buy white rum if you're going to do that. Once you've got the fish, do anything delicious that you want with it. Our favorites are often poke bowls or fish tacos or memorable fish sandwiches. We just take a hunk of that nice fish and saute it or grill it with some blackened seasoning, put it on a fresh roll with some tomato and lettuce, and you've got a fish sandwich better than anything you can find in any restaurant. I can't wait to share an anchorage with you, and if we've had luck with our simple fishing gear, we'll be sharing some of our catch with you, and we can toast to our good fortune to sharing an incredible lifestyle together. Thank you so much for listening to The Boat Galley. We love hearing from our listeners. In fact, this podcast, shout out to Mike and Betsy Sailing, this podcast is a direct result of a question that I had from a listener and a reader who said, will you please let us know what you catch fish with on Calypso? So thanks, Mike and Betsy Sailing. Appreciate it. We love hearing from our listeners. The Boat Galley is all about making boat life better, and I hope that this might have given you some food for thought, no pun intended, when you're thinking about your fishing gear. Thank you so much, and have a great week.